All right, our last experiment in our safety lab unit was the surprise fire experiment. If you remember, we took potassium permanganate and we turned our tart pan upside down and we put it on top of the tart pan and we made a little indentation or a little hole there like a volcano, and then we poured glycerin on top of the potassium permanganate. And we watched and we watched and we waited, and then all of a sudden it started to smoke and it broke out into a fire. So, what we're going to talk about now is what did we learn from our surprise fire experiment? I'm going to move us on ahead. So, we learned a couple of things here. Number one, never put chemicals together if you don't have a recipe. We again talked about the fact that if you are working on cleaning things at home and you run out of one, and so you decide, oh, I've only got a little bit of this particular chemical left to clean with, and you pour some more from a different bottle into that, never mix them because we don't know what's going to happen. You always want to have a recipe, just like in cooking. We also learned that fire does not always start up immediately. In this particular experiment, we talked about the fire triangle again. We had oxygen. It was all around us in the room. We had fuel, which was the potassium permanganate, and then when we poured that glycerin on top, it slowly started to heat up, and that's that smoke we saw. And when that heat got high enough, it produced the fire. So fire doesn't always start up immediately. And when we are at home, we talked about the fact that sometimes we can put something away in the garbage can thinking it's clean, it's not going to start fire, like ashes. Well, they might go in there and they might smolder, and you might put enough fuel in there, papers, paper towels, and they will eventually catch fire, and you might have left the kitchen already by that time. And you could have a fire in a room and you're not in it and not be aware of the fire. So it's very important to know what we are mixing together, what we are putting in that could have that heat or those three parts of the fire triangle. So number 3, we talked about something called spontaneous combustion. Spontaneous combustion is when atoms in the spontaneous combustion is when atoms in the two chemicals react with one another and they release energy, and there's enough energy to start a fire. So we learned earlier that combustion is causing something to burn, and we talked about the fact in this experiment that the two chemicals, the potassium permanganate and the glycerin, when they got together, they started each releasing energy, and between the two of them, there was enough energy release that it started a fire. So those are the things that we discussed and talked about in our surprise fire experiment.